All right, so everybody at home, listen to this online, watch it on YouTube, or in class, you have a copy of our vocabulary for ecosystems number 1. And one thing I want you to look at, I want you to notice that on the front of that page, it has a few things for you. It has the vocabulary word, and it has the definition. This was very different when I was doing Wordly Wise, which is what I based this off of. The teacher would give us our books. There were blank vocabulary words, and we had to get out the dictionary, not Google, and look up the words. And the definitions were super long and hard. Then we had to use that very long, hard definition and try to figure out the rest of the packet. I have already done some of the hard work for you by giving you the definitions. So you have in your hand the vocabulary word and the definitions. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the vocabulary word and the definitions on the front of your paper. Okay? What I want you to do is I want you to flip to page 2, which looks like this. It says complete the thought. And I know I covered a little bit of this with you very, very quickly yesterday, but I'm going to go over it all so that we've thoroughly gone over this. Everybody see that second page? Complete the thought is exactly what it sounds like. I have to put something in that blank to complete the thought. And it says, a worm breaks down dead material, so it is considered a what? So I look at the front. It's not an abiotic factor because a worm is living. It's not a worm is biotic, but that means nothing about breaking down dead things. And as I go through all of these definitions, I realize here that decomposers break down dead plants and animals into useful things. So the word that should go in that blank, and you should write it in now because you're getting some of the work already done, is decomposer. So if you were doing number 1 right here, the word that goes in that blank that you should be writing right now is decomposer. Decomposer goes in that first blank. If you come in here on Friday and decomposer's blank, I have a right to be angry because we're doing it in class together. All you have to do is pick your pencil up and write it down. Decomposer. Are there any questions on how to complete the other 9, complete the thoughts? Pretty easy, right? Even if I didn't talk about any of these words today, I think that would be very easy. But I'm going to talk about a lot of these words, most of them, and then I'll cover the rest after tomorrow. Everybody feel good about complete the thought? Yeah. If you look at the next section, it's not very different. This one just happens to have a bear is fascinating because it is an animal that eats meat and plants. I may not know the answer to that, so I go back into my definitions. Okay, it's not a biotic or an abiotic factor, not at least for this vocabulary. Okay, an animal that eats animals or meat is a carnivore. Is that what that said? No. Not the maximum population size, not the living things in an ecosystem. An animal that eats plants or eats other plant-eating animals. That would fit, right? So would an animal that eats both plants and animals. The best answer for that one is omnivore. A bear is most definitely a consumer, but omnivore is the best answer. So you can go ahead and write the answer down for that as well. Pencils up, answer written down. Omnivore is the answer for number 1, and find the better word. Yes? They're back there. Pencils are back there near the gumball machine with erasers in it. Get a pencil. We figured out both of those, right? Yeah. Not very hard. Now, I told you I won't do this to you very often. I only did it on the first few. You have a reading passage. I'm going to be very honest with you. A lot of this stuff in this reading passage you probably can already answer. For example, how could a forest fire affect an herbivore? Well, I got to know what an herbivore is first, right? I go back into my notes. An herbivore is an animal that eats plants. Somebody tell me how a forest fire might affect an animal that eats plants. Charlotte says it would burn all the plants and grass and trees and shrubs down. Therefore, the herbivore would have no food, and it would have two choices: die or move. I'm fairly certain the rabbit would choose move, right? Or deer, or moose, or fox, or not fox, but whatever else is an herbivore, right? Is that hard? Okay, so if you notice, that is it. So I'm just going to use Charlotte as an example. If Charlotte's mom calls me on Thursday and says, my baby's been working for 3 hours on this vocabulary packet and it's just too hard. I don't know why anyone would spend 3 hours working on this vocabulary packet. As a matter of fact, had I given it to you yesterday, you could have finished it in the car rider line. That lasted over an hour. Holy cow, I was out there forever. I thought I was going to have to sleep at the school. Who rode car rider line yesterday? Whoa, boy, we were out there forever. Woo, boy. Man, it was like 3:30, 3:45-ish. When car rider line was over, it was over an hour. It's like, oh my goodness gracious. You have time to finish this. I'm done with all of my rhyme work. Guess what else you can work on? Vocabulary. I'm riding the bus home. Guess what you could work on? Vocabulary. I've got to wait for my annoying little sister to finish her piano lessons. Guess what you can work on? Vocabulary. You have time to finish this packet, and your parents should not be calling me saying that it takes forever, right? This is not hard. Everybody feel good about the vocabulary packet? Awesome. So today we are going to start our unit on ecosystems. Ecosystems is supposed to take the entire quarter, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. We're going to get all of ecosystems done in the first quarter, but I'm going to add a few more things in there as well that we need to learn. Everybody feel good about that? Now, I know that I give you a vocabulary packet, and ecosystems is not a vocabulary word on there, but how can I teach you ecosystems if you don't know what the word means, right? So that's our very first vocabulary word. An ecosystem, what is it? It's all the living things and the non-living things in an area and how they interact with each other. So I want you to go ahead and get used to this. It would be really easy if all we had to remember was living things and non-living things, right? Give me the quiz, Mr. Bullens, I'm ready to go. But science is really weird. They love to give you more complex words as you go through things. And we're going to get to the first complex word here. And that word is biotic factor. Now, this word right here, bio, is a prefix. It goes before things in a word. And it's a Greek prefix, and it means life. So if you go to high school and you study biology, that's the study of living things, the study of life. So biotic factors are living things in an ecosystem. So again, if I go back to this, now I can change the way that I say this. All of the biotic factors. So there must mean that there's a word for non-living things, right? They make it easy, but in making it easy, they also make it very easy to get confused. Biotic factor, living. Abiotic factor, not living. Sunlight, soil, temperature, water. Those are things that aren't alive and never have been alive. So I don't want you to think, oh, that dead fox laying in the road is an abiotic factor. It is not. It's still made of things that were living. Abiotic factors are things that were never alive to begin with. Sunlight, soil, water, temperature are things that are in an ecosystem that you and I interact with, but has never been alive. So living things, biotic factors. Non-living things, sun, soil, temperature, and water, abiotic factors. We're not taking the quiz. I'll come back and watch those with you in just a second. Producers. Producers. Who's ever been to the store with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, brother, sister? You know that first place that you can turn into in the grocery store on the right-hand side? Typically, sometimes it's the left-hand side. And you look around and all I see is celery, lettuce, kale, turnips, green peppers, yellow peppers, red peppers, cherries, grapes, oranges, bananas, apples. That's the produce section. And everything in the produce section came from a plant, right? Or, as we're now going to call plants, a producer. Why do we call a plant a producer? Because it produces, through photosynthesis, its own food. All right, so I'm going to talk really quickly about consumers. Consumers are things that consume things. You might be a consumer that just eats plants. You might be a consumer that just eats meat. You might be a consumer that eats plants and meat. But it's any animal that eats plants, both, or just eats plant-eating animals, which is basically eating meat. If you consume something, you're a consumer. So plants, not consumers. Bears, hawks, snakes, birds, people, chimpanzees, consumers. Because we consume. So I want to cover 3 of the main types of consumers. And the first one being an herbivore. An herbivore is an animal that only eats plants. An herbivore is an animal that only eats plants. So as we look, and we'll flip back real quick. Herbivore is an animal that only eats plants. Carnivore, again with that prefix of carne, probably from Greek, Latin, and it means meat. This is an animal that only eats meat. Sharks, eagles, lions that only eat meat. Cheetahs, tigers, cheetah, that fast cat. They only eat meat. They are carnivores. Their entire diet consists of meat. All right, so we have herbivores that only eat plants. We have carnivores that only eat meat. There is one animal, or a set of animals, that eat both. Bears, primates, most humans, and we call them omnivores. Omnivores are animals that eat plants and meat.